I'm Kim Stafford. I'm the 9th Poet Laureate of the state of Oregon, and it's my honor to encounter the people of Tigard here at the Public Library to share poetry with them, share ideas about writing, about freedom in speech, about electing one's own self to be an important voice and to put that voice forward. The Poet Laureate is a custom that goes all the way back to Petrarch. In the late Middle Ages, the laureate means wore the laurels, wore a crown of leaves, crowned for skill, dedication, grace in the practice of poetry. In Oregon, what that means is to be an advocate for literacy, to visit schools, libraries, community centers, and meet poets, people who read poetry, people who don't think they like poetry, and try to bring them some pleasure in the craft. One thing I'm going to talk about is there are three things about poetry that are interesting to me. One is you can't make money writing poetry. Very few people can. And that means you're free. That means no one tells you how to do it. It's just a personal pleasure. Another thing about poetry, English teachers don't really know what to do with it. They don't know how to grade it. So sometimes they put a poem out there, students like it. Other times they put one that the teacher loves and the students don't like it. It's a realm of strong personal opinion. And there are certainly many poems that I can't understand. I can't understand why people like them. They're mysterious to me. And then I have others that go straight to my heart, and I love them. So, it's like anything. It's what touches you, what moves you, what connects for you. And so I like to put out a variety of poems in hopes that something will connect. Okay. I want to start with a poem that is about beginnings, because we've had our election and now it's up to all of us to lead our country forward. So this is a poem in celebration of beginnings. It's called I Am the Seed. Every chance I get, every place I fit, in a cleft of grit, in ravine or pit, my husk I split by ancient wit. I am the seed. I fell to the ground without a sound, by rainfall drowned, by sunlight found, by wonder crowned, through luck profound. I am the seed. After bout of grief, after fiery thief, though life is brief, I sprout relief with tender leaf beyond belief. I am the seed. I am the seed, small as a bead. Tell me your need, your hunger I'll feed. Any trouble you're in, I will begin. I am the seed. Up I rise to seek the prize from all that dies before your eyes, small and wise. I am the seed. Well, sometimes I find myself making a poem just to cheer myself up, just to feel a little better. And one thing you can do is go to rhymezone.com and type in a word and you get all the rhymes, and then you just take a salt shaker and you kind of put them through your poem like that. So, a lot of ways to begin a poem. I want to do one in honor of Anne Marie in the library here. This is not by me, this is by a Scottish poet named Julia Donaldson, and she just wants to have fun too. It's called I Opened a Book. I opened a book and in I strode, now nobody can find me. I've left my chair, my house, my road, my town, and my world behind me. I'm wearing the cloak, I've slipped on the ring, I've swallowed the magic potion, I've fought with a dragon, dined with a king, and dived in a bottomless ocean. I opened a book and made some friends. I shared their tears and laughter. and I followed their road with its bumps and bends to the happily ever after. I finished my book, and out I came. The cloak can no longer hide me. My chair and my house are just the same, but I have a book inside me. I mean, that's like a charm. You know, it makes a magic thing happen. And you can't get it out of your head. That's a good thing, too. Okay, I'm going to read one poem about the election, and then we're going to move on. This is called Election 2018. I wrote it yesterday. Who shall we vote to be? Not counting ballots so we can abdicate leadership, saying with a sidelong glance, now the governor will do it. Now it's up to the senator. Now we can leave it to the wise and cooperative team in the halls of power. Our future is in their hands. No, my friends, no. I'm talking about electing the self, the true citizen's calling to serve through kindness at every encounter, through thoughtful words at every impasse, through listening with all your heart and mind to the beautiful, difficult future of every child. That's what we're elected to do. Okay. So I just had to make a little poem to remind myself it's not up to them. It's up to us. It's up to me. Okay, now I'll begin the reading with a little blessing I've written that I've carried around the state. You know, my job with the Cultural Trust and the Arts Commission and so on is to, as it says, do up to 20 events per year. I'm up to 55 so far. Because, you know, I get these invitations and besides they're in such interesting places. I get to go to Tigard. It makes my day. You know, I get to go to the Alvord Desert and do a poetry event. I get to go to Gold Beach, Cannon Beach, Hood River. I get to go to True Rivers Prison next week out in Umatilla, go to Temescallik, the reservation. And so in that spirit, this is called All My Relations. I want to thank all my relations for this chance to be on earth in her time of flourishing. To thank the first people of this place, to honor their sovereignty in long and continuing relation, still teaching us how we might be here together. I want to thank my mother and father, moon and sun, for setting me forth before their own passing on. To thank my grandmother, who listened to me so eloquently, I learned to listen to my own heart and mind. To find stories and songs there. I want to thank my family and friends and all citizens and travelers who work and study for deeper kinship in this place with one another and with all creatures. One earth, visible, palpable, fragile, intricate, resonant, in need of our better stories. I want to thank you who have gathered to receive what I have carried here, in hope that something I have may meet something you need, so all our relations may be strengthened for this life we live together. Amen. Okay, so my predecessor as poet laureate, you know, my dad was 3 or 4 poet laureates ago, he kept trying to quit. You know, 3 governors, he would send his letter of resignation saying, someone else better be poet. And they'd say, are you kidding? Why would I get someone else? I have William Stafford, you know. Finally, he just said, that's it. And he stopped. But he, you know, he traveled around. He would compose a poem for the legislature each year and read it at the opening session. But anyway, my predecessor, Elizabeth Woody from Warm Springs, she became a writer when she got a letter from her high school principal that she'd been suspended. The same day she got a letter saying she'd been selected for this statewide poetry honor. And so she was off. And her karma was to go to many schools and read poems. But she sent me a letter, probably 35 years ago now. She sent me this letter that has a passage that I think really speaks in the spirit of all our relations. Dear Kim, our people, she's Navajo and Wasco. Our people have a genius or great intelligence, or we are part of a great intelligence that shows us what we must do. It doesn't matter to whom it speaks blood-wise. If we love and honor one another, the experience grows and cycles back, and with less effort than when we first consciously tried to acquire knowledge, things fall in place. The earth and being has a voice and its own requirements that really is stronger than weakness or loneliness or even greed in all its forms. I am learning myself all the time and am grateful, even though I feel my limits nagging at me. I wanted to tell you this a while back, but I guess now is all right. You know, that easygoing friendship of a letter, I really want to draw on that in making poems. One thing Elizabeth said in her last reading as Poet Laureate was, the more I do poetry, the less it's about the poem and the more it's about who the poem serves. So it's not the poem itself, it's sort of the trajectory of the poem toward human need, toward understanding, toward kinship. So I sort of divided this reading into a couple parts. The first is the world coming toward you. So poetry describing the world coming toward you, the information, the stories, the sensations, the events that you're sort of harvesting. You know, you're hunting and gathering, the oldest thing we've done. You go around, you overhear something, you see something. And then the next part, where the poem is going. It's going to a person, it's going to a purpose, a place. So here's where it's coming. My wife Perrin and I sleep out on the porch as long as we can into the fall. And so sometimes in the middle of the night, the geese are going over. And so this is called Sleeping on the Porch in Autumn, where I'm hearing the geese. A few stars through the wisteria vines, a chorus of crickets embroidering the dark. Thoughts of the day begin to blur, and then we are gone into the river of sleep until 3 a.m., when the geese wake us in their thrum chant high, beating south against the stars in filigree, a lacy screen of grace passing over. Each voice calling, this way, clear star, river turns, how far? Wings burn, soon day, we learn, shiver wing, feather sing, holy, 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 all the way home. So this thing of listening to the world, you know, Perrin and I took a class from a Nez Perce elder, Horace Axtell, out at the Fish Trap Gathering, and he started the class by saying, if you want to learn to speak Nez Perce, you just need to listen to the birds. They're all speaking Nez Perce. They're all saying their names in Nez Perce. They like saying their names so much, they just say them over and over. And so the robin says, we spoch poch, we spoch poch. You just go outside here, you can hear the robin saying, we spoch poch. And the raven says, ha ha, ha ha, ha ha. So we're all, you know, he was sitting in a circle and we'd all go, ha ha, and then the next person would go, ha ha. Finally, Horace started laughing. He said, you all look like a bunch of storks trying to drink. Ha 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 ha. So this thing of listening to the birds, it goes way back in poetry. I want to give you an old English poem. We don't know who wrote it. It's by the greatest poet of all, anonymous. Probably written in the 800s. And I'll give it to you in English and then in Old English. And I wish I could do it in Whistling Swan, because it's describing the whistling swan. You know, if you ever heard the whistling swan, it doesn't make a sound with its voice. The wings are singing. It makes this whistling sound as it goes. So here's the translation of the poem first. Silent is my shirt when I walk the earth or dwell in town or stir the waters. Sometimes my shining lifts me up over the houses of heroes. And this high air, the power of the sky, bear me far above the human. Then my beauties sound in song. Sing aloud a clear tune. Then I do not rest on land or water, a traveling ghost. There's something very mysterious for me in this poem, because it's a swan speaking, but it's a person using the voice of the swan to express a kind of longing. This is really a human utterance. Someone maybe who's lost someone, or whose spirit has traveled from a troubled place into the sky to go to something more beautiful. So let me just read the translation again and think of it as a human utterance this time. Silent is my shirt when I walk the earth or dwell in town or stir the waters. Sometimes my shining lifts me up over the houses of heroes. And this high air and the power of the sky bear me far above the human. Then my beauties sound in song. Sing loud a clear tune. Then I do not rest on land or water, a traveling ghost. Regel means swigath. Thon ich rusen tredo over otha, ich Buddha otha wado drefa, huilo mek ahebath. Over Halle the Bicht, Hirsta, Mina, on Theos hea lift, und mechthon wieder wolkna strengu over folk bereth. Fratwa Mina, swogath luda, on swinsiath, torta singath, don itjetenga nebeum, floda und foldan, fairende gast. A faring ghost, fairende gast. So, we've been doing this for a long time. Sort of there are voices around us, there are voices within us. We put them into words and we send them toward another person. Our son, Guthrie, who's now a philosophy major at the University of Oregon, in a couple of years he'll be searching for a job. So if you have any ideas, please approach me after the program. But when he was younger, he's just been a philosopher all his life. One time we were sitting at breakfast and he got this philosopher look in his face. And he said, what if there was a sun and a moon of solid ice, and the sun melted the ice and then the water put out the sun? Where would the gravity go? I don't know. Another time he said, Dad, we didn't become human when we invented tools, because when you use a tool, you just look at the tool. We became human when we looked across the fire into each other's eyes and told stories. That's when we were human. And one of my feelings about poetry is we go back to that place. We look across the fire into each other's eyes and tell stories. So this idea of the world speaking to you, the world giving you the materials of poetry. I have this new thing I'm trying out that I call nonfiction poetry. Nonfiction. I don't know where they'd put it in the library, the nonfiction poem. I'd have to maybe create a new category. But here's one example. I went to get an MRI. I'm okay, by the way, but I'm getting the MRI. And being a poet, I became fascinated by the chart I was filling out. There was all this cool stuff that they wanted to know about me, So I'm filling it out, but I'm also, taking notes. And so this poem is called Before the MRI, and it's verbatim from the chart, and then what the gentleman said as I went into the torture chamber before the MRI. Do you have a pacemaker? Do you have an implanted cardio defibrillator? Do you have a programmable shunt? Do you have a deep brain stimulator? And I thought, I want one of those. Well, how does that work? Do you have metal in your eyes? Apparently welders sometimes get little flecks of metal in their eyes, and the MRI does not like that. Do you have tattoos, piercings, a toupee? Do you have bullets or shrapnel under your skin? Do you have permanent makeup? Empty your pockets. No phone, no keys, no change. Lie down on this bed. Enter this tunnel. Close your eyes. It will be loud. Good luck. Well, I didn't have to make anything up. It just sort of came to me. And the thing about poetry is it can cheer you up. One of the things they say about the duty of the poet is in good times, when everybody's cruising along, remind them this won't last forever. And when things are dark and difficult, celebrate. You're the counterpoint. You're because life, gets hard for a while and it gets better. And the poet is trying to, look at the big picture. So here's another one in which I started with verbatim material coming from the world, and then I fiddled with it a little bit. It's called Presidential Alert. And the first 4 lines I think you may recognize because you received this message. Presidential Alert. This is a test of the National Wireless Emergency Alert System. No action is needed. This is your president speaking. Please take no action. This is only a test. Please remain calm and silent. The national wireless is invisible and everywhere. Please take no action. No need to be alert. Who says this is an emergency? Just because I have your number, no action is needed. This is only a test of what I can do if I choose. No action is needed. Please be silent. I am in favor of no action. No need to be alert. This is a test. So, you just sort of play with what's there. Okay, now here's one where I received the information and then I fiddled with it a bit more. In this case, I came across an article in the Guardian newspaper that had this startling fact that most charity is given by poor people to poorer people. It's not given by the fat cats. Poor people to poorer people. And I was just so struck by that. I started to imagine, how are these transactions taking place? Who are these saints? So it's called love money. Love money. I heard it on the news. Most charity is sent by poor people to poorer people, 5, 6, 800 billion across borders each year. A father sweeping in London for his family in Bangalore. A mother changing sheets in Dubai for her children in Kathmandu. A brother weeding lettuce in the San Joaquin to fund his younger brother's dream in Michoacan. For without the younger brother's dream, this would be too hard a life. Without the children there, the bent back here would hurt with no remedy. Without the broom at Trafalgar Square restoring clean stone, there would be no way to love at this distance. No long flying bird to send a song for the little ones growing taller with only a smudged photo of their patron ghost with that crooked smile. Okay, I'm going to do one more in this vein, and this is sort of rough, and then it'll lighten up. But I got into another article in The Guardian. I just started listing, these are facts, but I call them passionate facts. There's certain facts that, yeah, okay. And then there are other ones that, oh, wow, ouch. So this was a catalog of how birds die in the modern world. So it has 2 parts. First, how birds die, and part 2. I teach my students, write your poem, then write part 2. So part 2 is how birds live. So we'll get to that in a minute. But first, part 1, how birds die. Get caught by a kitty cat, 2.4 billion. Collateral damage of industry, 700 million. Hit a window, 600 million. Hit a car, 214 million. Get poisoned, 72 million. Hit a power line, 25 million. Get electrocuted, 5 million. Hit a turbine, 234,000. Get blinded by city lights and stray. Search in vain for Starlight's guide. Get out of sync with climate change. Depart too late, arrive too early. Land in a lake of arsenic. Get your wings fouled in oil. eat plastic, eat foil, eat lead shot and have a seizure. Eat poisoned insects and carry their doom. Lose your acre of breeding ground and so circle the parking lot that used to be a marsh. Circle and circle, cry and cry. Be a snowy owl in the era of Harry Potter, caged by a reader, expected to prophesy. Be the wild pet of 7 billion mammals with hands. Be the last of your kind, singing and singing. Part 2, How Birds Live. Fence wire, a throne for singing and singing. Thorns in the blackberry thicket, jewels of safety. A vacant lot rife with a chance mix, heaven. Wing bars of crimson, mustard, and moss, kinfolk. A fat worm, a ripe seed, a caught beetle, enough. Twig feet on a twig after 1,000 miles, rest. Bill tucked under a wing, spiral home. Cast off thread and thistledown, snug nest. A silence into which to put a few notes, duet. Breeding season, egg season, fledgling season, destiny. Wings in the mist, riding, gliding, no trace. Heart surge song rising, beauty's custodian. A short, intense, breathless life, grace. So that one's for the wild birds. Okay, so, these things are coming in and it's like Bob Dylan said, I don't write songs, I just write them down. They're coming, they're everywhere. And part of being a poet is just taking dictation on the world, being the secretary, being more alert than smart. More alert than smart. More attentive than skillful. So one night, a friend of mine sent me an email. And with email, you can tell when it was sent. So my friend Sharon sent this at 2 a.m. And I had just learned from her a few days before that her parents and her husband's parents needed full-time care within 2 weeks. So everything changed in Sharon's life. And so she sent me this email. Dear Kim, in the wee hours of the morning, it struck me I am in need of a poem, a prescription that would hearten my soul and give me some strength to face these days. Do you have a favorite heartening poem you could recommend? Something that through humor or empathy or drawing on spirit brings a little light and hope? No worries if not. So I stayed up all night making a book for Sharon. It's one of the little books that's over here. I've become addicted to making these little self-published books. And one of those is the book I made for Sharon. It's called Circumference. And it's just filled with poems of consolation, of accompaniment. And so I'm going to read several poems for people. This idea of a gift. So the world gives you gifts and then you send forth gifts. So this one's called For the Woman Picking Litter from the Beach. We were down at Manzanita and we saw this crazy lady trying to pick up all the litter on the beach. I just thought, what are you doing? That's impossible. But then I realized she was humming to herself. She was very happy. And so the next morning when I was writing, I wrote For the Woman Picking Litter from the Beach. Her task is vast. In fact, impossible. So why is she humming as she snatches plastic bits from drift rack all along the high tide line? Glum lovers pass their world of finite joy, already waning, while her future's filled with a clear calling ahead and a clean set of tracks behind. Sometimes one thing a poem can do is help you remember or recognize or find what am I here to do? What am I here to do? A friend of mine and I, we made a vow, only do what only you can do. You know, there are a lot of things you could do that other people could do. What's the thing you're here to do? You know, for me, it's making poems and giving poems and teaching writing. But for everyone, a little something different that gives you a clear path ahead. That's what I'm doing, the kind of thing a salmon knows. You know, a friend of mine, I wrote him when I was very confused. I was very buffeted by all kinds of things. And he wrote back and said, Kim, you're a salmon. You have a place to go. You have a thing to do, and you will die to get there. You don't have to convince the school of fish swirling around you. That's your path. So that idea of knowing where you're going. Okay, so, you know, I'd done a number of these little books, and my beloved wife said, well, you've written all these love poems for me. Why don't you make a book of those? Oh, good idea. So that one's called In Praise of Disarray. And this is one of the poems from that book. It's called, My Wife Wakes Me at 3 a.m. to tell me she is overwhelmed. Not for joy did we marry, but for this. To hammer through the to-do list in the dark, despair shared, one to lament and one to listen, knowing nothing can be done before dawn, but still the quiet aria comes, fierce prosecution of the self, as I say, what can be done will be done in time. For soon the tide will turn, days will bloom and fade, impossible imperatives will shrink to their true size for her, but rise to a tidal wave for me. And in the night cast down, I will be the one lamenting to my bride at the dark heart of my defeat, and she will tell me all is well in this dance we do for one another. Okay, so writing poems for someone. This idea, and I want to give you your optional homework right now. The more I teach, the more I'm into optional homework. The optional homework is to think of someone in your life who needs a poem. And either find one for them or write one for them. This is very different from turning in a poem to a teacher or bringing it to a writing group for critique. You know, this is more like the salmon thing. This poem has one place to go. It's going to go to this person, and it's going to be savored. We have a friend, Mike Midlow, who works out at Fish Trap. He's a songwriter. And somebody asked him one time, so when you write a new song, who do you sing it to first? He said, oh, without exception, to my dogs. I come in, I build up the fire in the stove, my dogs are all lying around, I sing this song, the tails start thumping. They love it. You know, they're just, ears are going up, and I'm on my way, you know. And other people like it or don't like it, that's less important. The dogs like it. So this idea of sending the poem to someone who, they've been waiting all their lives for this poem. So in this case, I was invited to go down to OSCI, the Oregon State Correctional Institution, east of Salem. It's the one-level prison where the older prisoners are moved so they don't have to climb stairs. And, you know, and there's a poetry class there. I got to meet the most attentive class I've ever had. You know, these guys had really done their homework and they had really read closely, and their questions were things like, there's this one line in your poem, it's been keeping me awake for 7 nights trying to figure out what it means. Could you help me? You know, so we talk about that. So I wrote this poem for them called Poetry in Prison. You're in, but the question is, what's in you? What story, aching to be told, do you hold in solitary, shackled, denied its rights to visitors? The hard things that happened are gold you could hammer into shape. The pain you could twist, the grief you could make shimmer, the lost good thing you could restore by telling it back into being. Everyone is in prison one way or another, and everyone is free one way or another. The trick is to find your way to bear the story forth so it shines in a listener's mind. Okay, one more, maybe two more poems for people. This was the hardest writing assignment I ever got. You know how in school, you probably remember, at the beginning, it's okay. If you get a sentence, that's really good. You got a whole sentence. And then pretty soon it's half a page. And then it's the one-page book report. And then it's the 5-page proto-research paper. And then it's the 12-page real research. You know, and it's out of control. I mean, the teachers have no mercy. I get to say that because I am one. But finally, I got into graduate school, and my dissertation director said, I'll be very surprised if your dissertation comes in under 300 pages. Okay, here we go. So I dutifully did my 300 pages, and then he read it and he wrote on the cover, "This may be the most turgid prose ever penned." And I wasn't sure what turgid meant, but I knew it wasn't good. You know, it wasn't good. I looked it up later and I was right, it was not good. But that was easy compared to this assignment, which was, would you write a poem to put on the wall at the pediatric intensive care waiting room at Dornbecker Children's Hospital to comfort a frightened parent while the child is in surgery? And you know, my immediate reaction was, no. No, it's not that I won't, I can't do that. And then I realized I have to do that. So I appealed to my friends, and one of them said, well, I know what you don't say. You don't say everything will be okay, because you don't know. And that would be a lie. There's not a time for a lie. And so we talked some more, and finally we came to this idea, you might say, you are part of a very old story. You are part of a very big story. You are inside an old epic that's going, and you're traveling with it. So I composed this poem, and I came across the title for the poem, Naknuwisha, which is a Yakima Indian word that means to care for something so precious it swallows you. Something so precious it takes over. Naknuwisha. So it's up there in 6 languages on the 8th floor of Dornbecker. Young friend, be part of something old. Be home here in the great world, where forest wants to be your house, where rain wants to be your coat, where frogs say your name and your name, where wee birds carry your wishes far, and sunlight reaches for your hand. Be home here. Be healed. Be with us all, young friend. Okay, I want to do a poem for someone who's gone, my brother, who died 30 years ago today, 1988, November 7th. And the funny thing is, he's not gone. He was gone for a long time. You know, you couldn't say his name in my family. It was forbidden, because then everybody would start crying. And so it was like he was exiled from us. It was as if the end of his life was his story. And I realized that's not true. That was just one day in his life. And I wanted him back. So there's a book over there called 100 Tricks Every Boy Can Do, How My Brother Disappeared. It tells the story. But I just want to do this poem for him. It's called A Cup of Red Wine. My brother was extraordinary, and he is strewn along the ridge below the mountain. I found the fountain of rain when I went crazy as a loon with grief, feeding my heart dew on lupin, sunlight on stone, to sip and sip the survival food of beauty, arranged and disarranged, as any living thing must be, to take a river of sorrow and a storm of grace in equal measure. Now it grows hard to know the source, when vital calm threads an evening, and reaching out my hand, my brother lifts the cup. Okay, one more poem, and then I'll sing a song, and then we'll have some questions. It's called The Fact of Forgiveness, and this one is addressed to myself. Try to forgive myself for my failings. The fact of forgiveness. So it says you, but it's not addressed to you, it's addressed to me. It is a given you have failed. It goes without saying you were hurt, and so you hurt some others. Of course, you alone could have saved someone or something, and you did not. The midnight court of the sleepless mind has reached its verdict. Life sentence. Life will be long and hard, but also mysterious in how you are condemned to live by beauty all the same. Through the bars of your cell, you must watch the moon grow full and generous. A tune made for others will arrive at evening, smuggled into your mind as if for you. The world can't keep its treasure from you. No matter how little you deserve, you have it all. Sun, moon, sleep, waking, water, air, a bird dancing away out of sight, leaving the print of its flight and a filament of song for you. So let's have a song and then some questions. Wow. This is a lullaby for our son. Except it doesn't go like that. Dandelion, daisy, marigold, bachelor button blue, ladybug, beetle, all decked out in red, sipping from the dew. With moss for a napkin, a stick for a spoon, a nutshell for a bowl. We'll feast all night by the pale moonlight, says Mr. to Mrs. Mole. And the crickets were singing later that night. They began to chant, Guthrie, come out, it's Guthrie we want. Guthrie, come out and dance. Guthrie, come over now, don't be afraid. The grass is shining with dew. Guthrie, come over and roll in the clover. We're waiting out here for you. Okay, I think I'll do two more poems, and then please stick around and let's talk and look at books and share those poems around. This one's called At the Bird Refuge on MLK Day. We were out at Sauvie Island, and I met this really kind person there. At the Bird Refuge on MLK Day. We met at the island to stand on the levee watching young mergansers learning to fish, diving clean to the invisible, turning in the dark to follow silver flashes, then splashing back into the light. He black and I white, sharing his binoculars to understand life beyond the human. We kept our voices low so not to frighten the lesson in survival we could witness there. Behind us, all the marching, all the hurt, the hate, prison, baton, fire hose, dogs, the Selma Bridge, the strike, the bombing, Emmett, Edgar, Martin. Before us, calm water, young life, a future, and between us, back and forth, the lens for seeing. And then this last one illustrates a couple things. One is, sometimes I'm so troubled by the state of the world, all I can do is go pick blueberries. And in July, I just had to go up to Corbett to the clock farm and pick blueberries. And one thing I love about it is there are all these different languages. And everybody's in a good mood, even the kids, because they're picking and eating and, talking to each other, running around. And the other thing in the poem is a lot of my experience with poetry is I just get a little phrase. I'm realizing that I'm doing the easy pickings, the fat ones up in the sun. And just that phrase, easy pickings, I write it in my notebook, and then the next day, I write this poem for you, easy pickings. It's easy to laugh in the blueberry field, staccato plink and plunk as berries plummet into the pail, and you hear children banter in a dozen languages among the green rows. It's easy to forgive there, too, viewing old betrayals sweetly diminished by the honeyed crush of berries on your tongue. It's even possible to imagine peace between people who hated each other before their children met between these rows and asked one another, "Shall we pick together? Come pick with me, my enemy, my angry self. Come, split couple bickering over money. Come to the blueberry field, Palestine and Israel. Come bow and squint under the sun-splashed leaves. Come peer into these dark shadows for blue." Thank you. I would say one other thing about poetry. There's a famous quote by a poet named William Carlos Williams that poetry doesn't sell, but people die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. That is, a poem is a luxury in life. You may think you don't need it, but it could save your life, too. It could give you direction, clarity, passion. It could lead you on the path of your greatest delight, your true vocation. So sometimes you can find in a poem consolation for trouble, calm for anger, healing from regret, and it can set you on a path. I find often when there's a tragedy, people turn to poetry, and there's a reason. There's something there that can't be found anywhere else.